You've got a passion for the outdoors, a desire to feel the warm sun on your face, the sound of your fly line whipping through the air, the pop of the water as the fish inhales the fly you just found in the floorboard of your truck. You need to feel the cool waters on your feet, the crisp north breeze of a November morning, the sound of a turkey gobble, the December rut, the chills of an elk bugle in September. It's the longing passion to chase your obsession. This is what we share. This is what we preach. Welcome to Honey Hole Hangout.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Hangout. Today we have me, I'm Landon, we have the Zacks, and we have a very special guest, Matt Bennett. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a long time coming because we asked you to come on like right before you were moving. And you're like, let me get moved, let me get settled. Come to find out in the pre-show, you're not even settled yet.
Nope. Still got stuff in boxes.
So, well, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for doing it. And I want to give you a special thank you from the Ironfly because you donated a box of flies that were very popular, and we use that to raise money for a great organization. So we really, really appreciate your donation.
Sure, happy to do it.
And when we do it next year, we might have to rope you into coming down and being a judge.
Maybe, yeah. I didn't always need an excuse to come over.
Okay, right. Okay. We'll talk.
Okay.
So, let's start with this, Matt. Just going to come out hot.
Oh, boy.
Does tying your own flies save money?
No. Absolutely not. All right, so yes.
So even if you tell your wife they save money, so that way you can get into it.
You probably shouldn't lie to your wife. That's
Landon.
Just ruin the whole foundation of marriage. I mean, yeah, you can save money. I've never met anybody with the willpower to. So here's how you would save money. Say, okay, I'm going to tie clouser minnows, and I'm going to tie chartreuse and white clouser minnows on a size 2 TMCO 811S and medium lead eyes, and that's all I'm going to buy. That's it. I'm going to buy some white bucktails, some chartreuse bucktails, some crystal flash, some eyes, and some hooks. But instead you go, and if I could turn my camera, I would, but instead you buy a whole closet full of crap. Some of it that you don't even know you have. I tie more than most of you, let's say. And I probably have 300 bucktails in that closet right now.
That room must smell like shit.
No, my wife can tell when I open it. She's like, "Oh, you opened the bucktail box." I got a bunch of like aromatic cedar in there, and it just makes it worse. But yeah, that's the thing we end up doing as fly tires is you're like, "Oh, this material looks cool. Let me try this, and let me buy this, and let me try this out," and all of a sudden you end up with a fly shop's worth of stuff in your house, and that's how anybody that I've ever met that I've taught or anything like that ends up in the sport. They just get eaten up with it, and that's why some fly shops could stay in business because we're just buying all kinds of stuff.
Well, see, and you also you end up tying as a hobby too. So it's not just tying to fish anymore. Now you're tying to tie flies. So you're going to tie stuff for GTs, even though you may never go fish for them. Right? You're just tying flies for the fun of tying the flies. So that adds to it. It just makes it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of gotten into like classic flies and like classic streamers and salmon flies and stuff like that. I'm never going to fish this stuff, but I think the flies look really cool and there's a certain challenge in tying that kind of style. So I've gotten into that, but I'm never going to go. I mean, I may go fish for steelhead, but I'm never going to really go fish like a classic Atlantic salmon fly that took 15 hours to tie. Like, I'm gonna put it on a mantle somewhere and never fish it. That's just how it is.
Yeah, no, I've never met anybody with that willpower either, because you do have to like pick a fly and just maintain the pattern. Like I'm just gonna tie woolly buggers and clousers, and that's it.
And that's fine. You can catch pretty much every fish out there on woolly buggers and clousers or variations. Yeah. Like there's no reason why we make it as complicated as we do. Like you don't have to. You don't need every pattern out there in your fly box. You had just woolly buggers and clousers. That's enough.
And lunch
you don't. But as a fly tyer, like you said, you go into a fly shop and you see a new material on the wall that you've never tied before. Like, oh, that'll be interesting. Here's another $20, and that just happens over and over and over and over again until you're 10 grand in the hole instead of $45 positive. So,
yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah. So, hey Matt, walk us through like how did you get into fly fishing and fly tying? Like, where did that start for you?
So when I was probably 12 or 14, we have a cabin up in Colorado, near Durango that's been in the family for, ever since I've been alive. So I found my grandpa's old Berkeley fiberglass fly rod in a, closet up there. I think it was after he passed away. Took it kind of out. And I knew what fly fishing was, being up there and then seeing people fishing like on the San Juan or something like that. Kind of took it out and started casting with it. And I remember it was so like dry rotted, the ferrule like just broke, just like laid over like that at like the second piece. It was a 2-piece rod. And I was like, all right. So I think my dad ended up getting both my brother and I like Cortland outfits, and we just took them to like farm ponds here in Louisiana and started catching bass and bluegill and stuff, and then went back to Colorado to catch trout and started going on guide trips with the Duranglers that shop in Durango. I know those guys really well. We've been on a lot of trips with them. And then maybe when I was like 16 or so, I think my aunt one Christmas got me, and it may have been before that, got me a Cabela's fly tying kit. I kind of just, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I took it to Colorado with me one summer and like started actually tying flies. And it's funny because I talk about this a lot with people, but one of the flies, it came with Jack Dennis's Western Fly Tying book. I still have it. It's on the bookshelf behind me. And one of the flies in that book that I want you to start with is a humpy.
Oh.
And if you know about the humpy, I have trouble tying a good humpy now. You'll have to look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about, but it's a dry fly with, it's like a folded over deer hair body, deer hair tail, big deer hair wings. It's really complicated to put together. And that was one of the first flies that I tried to be able to tie. So I spent, we spent a lot of time up there during the summertime. So I remember the first fish I caught was on it was a parachute grasshopper that I tied, and I didn't have any like parachute post material. So I was just like, I'll just use some bucktail like butts. And it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen, but it was enough for that tiny brook trout to come up and eat it. It'd probably never seen any. Hey, there you go. That is not well tied, but yeah, that's all. Well, that's all right. So there's some debate here because that I see it says goofus bug, and that's actually a different pattern. So there's some debate in the fly tying community about which one came first, the goofus bug or the humpy. So you just walk straight into a conversation or into a debate without even knowing about it.
Yeah, so what's the difference between the goofus bug and the humpy?
I think they're pretty close.
Probably has a different color thread.
See, that looks like a Charlie Craven tie. It's nice and clean. I think the goofus bug is like a Midwest pattern, if I remember right, and I may be wrong. It may be like a Montana thing, and the humpy was like it was like two. And this is an interesting thing that's kind of happened like throughout fly development, is kind of two patterns being created that are almost identical at the same time at like different geographical locations, and everybody always ends up fighting about who came first.
Which one's supreme?
Yeah. So anyway, I got into tying, I still remember that first fish I caught on a fly. Put it down when I went to college just because just didn't have time. And then when I moved to Round Rock in 2008 or 9, met Chris Johnson at Living Waters when he was first starting his shop, and kind of got back into it and plugged into the community up there. And the rest is history, I guess, as they say.
How soon after that did you decide that, realize that, I really like this and maybe I want to do this commercially?
So I worked in Chris's shop at Living Waters for 3 or 4 years, I think, and did a decent amount of custom tying and production tying through the shop, just for people who had come in. We had this one guy who would always want these dress treble hooks for his poppers for conventional fishing. So that I remember Chris, when that guy came in, Chris said, "Oh, here's the treble hook guy." So we had to try these dress treble hooks with feathers for this guy. And after being there a few years, I just kind of had the opportunity to go out on my own and kind of start doing my own thing. And that's, really when I started doing it. It was kind of a leap of faith because I didn't really know what I was getting into. You never really do, I think, owning your own business and all the paperwork and accounting and not fun stuff you have to do to be able to actually do the actual job to make money. So there's a lot of the business side of things that I kind of was just flying by the seat of my pants. And, I talked to my dad a good bit about it because, he's owned his own business for a long time. And I kind of got some guidance along the way there, but, a lot of it is just figuring it out, learning by doing kind of thing. If you look up how to start your own fly tying business on the internet, you're not going to find a whole lot of people talking about it because there's not a whole lot of people dumb enough to actually do it. Paying a mortgage in the middle of Austin one fly at a time is not something I recommend for the faint of heart.
No way.
Yeah.
I can't even tie 3 flies at a time before I have to walk away and go do something else. I don't know how you did it, man.
Just I bought a really good chair and a good desk and said, okay, well, I'm just gonna have to. And I end up working odd hours. I'll get up early and tie and do some other stuff. And for a long time, I kind of supplemented that. I worked for Bennett Collins, who I'm sure you guys know. We did some rep stuff together. I worked for him back before he did Orbis, and that really helped supplement things for me before things got kind of crazy. So I'm thankful for him giving me that opportunity too, because I don't know if I would have made it otherwise. It's just hard. It's hard making enough money you can have all the passion in the world, but you have to be able to turn it into a viable business if you're going to try and, go for it. So,
yeah. When did you design your first fly pattern, and what was your first fly pattern that you designed? And then you realized you kind of had maybe something special there.
It was a lunch money. That was the first one.
Okay.
So I still have one of my very first ones or in here somewhere. I can't even remember dates at this point, but probably 2010, something like that. Maybe a little before that. I got Charlie Craven's Gonga pattern, which is a kind of it's not really, it's an oversimplification, but it's like a woolly bugger with a wool head and some legs on it. Great pattern. So I started fishing that on the Llano a lot because he had this tan and yellow one, which is a great color for the hill country. So I started fishing that out there, and I was like, you know what, I really want this fly to ride hook up. So I tied some with the hook up, and I was like, okay, well, I'd rather have rabbit strip for the tail. And this new material called laser dub had just come out, and it made this really nice translucent body. So I inverted the hook. I did rabbit instead of marabou. I started putting laser dub on it, and I mean, it was basically a new pattern at that point. Which I'm sure there's some debate about what we could get into that. What qualifies as a new pattern? But I did years and years of like R&D and stuff like that on this fly, and to get it to where it is now. I submitted it to Umpqua. I don't remember when that was. Maybe like mid 2010, something like that, 2015. And they picked it up, and that really helped popularize things. They still have it in 4 or 5 colors. I have several other colors I sent to them, actually they're picking up the Rio Getter and the Carpet Bomb too. So.
Is that new? That's as of like recent news?
Yes. Yeah, that's within the past like 6 months.
Nice.
Had some big help from Chris Johnson at Living Waters on that, so shout out to him. Umpqua and really the fly market in general is geared a lot more towards cold water, and as you guys see with stuff, there's just a lot more money to be made, and a lot more people fly fishing for trout than us fishing for carp or bass or whatever else. So took some convincing from his end of things, from Chris's side, to get Umpqua to do it. And Umpqua's been a great partner for me to work with through all this. So I'm happy to. I can't tie him as much anymore, so I'm happy to still have him available out there here in hopefully a year or so.
I'm surprised it took some convincing. The Carpet Bomb I kind of get, but the Rio Getter, Getter, that's such a good, even for trout. I mean, I feel like they can be fished for trout just fine.
I kind of pitched it to him as this is a fly I fish everywhere, but I do fish it for trout, but it was designed specifically for Rios. And you think about how small the warm water market is, and now you're taking like a subset of that and trying to like, I want you guys to sell this fly for this one specific fish that only is in like Central Texas and Southeast Louisiana. It's kind of a hard sell for a company looking to make money, but I have a feeling hopefully it'll sell enough to stay around for a while.
I think so.
Yeah,
I fished that for man. I learned to tie that a long time ago. I learned to tie it, and I would tie them with bead chains so they would sink just a little bit slower.
A little slower, man,
you catch everything on an olive Rio Getter, no problem.
That was the only fly I fished exclusively, except for like a pink brunch money every now and then. Like it was like those.
That's my confidence fly at Real Recovery. Whenever I'm like, oh man, I got to get my guy on a fish. It's like, all right, I'm gonna put a Rio Getter on. It's gonna happen. So
there's so much out there that's small and dark and has little legs to it. Like it just looks like everything that we have in the hill country
But it's not. There's just something, I don't know what it is, but there's just something that's better about the Rio Getter.
So I can tell you how that one started too. It was Chris and I were fishing Upper Brushy Creek. Which is real skinny and real clear, and there's this variation of a Prince nymph called the Aggravator nymph, and Umpqua may still have it in their catalog. It's a traditional Prince nymph on a streamer hook with a marabou. Instead of the biot tail coming out the back, it was like a little puff of marabou. So I started fishing that for Rios and just catching tons of them. And again, I was like, okay, I want to make this smaller, flip it upside down, because with Rios especially, you want to be able to have something that sits on the bottom that you can just leave like there and just give a little tiny strip and just make it like hop one time or something to get them to eat it. If a fly is too long, a lot of times what they'll do is come over and just pick the fly up by the legs or the tail and just move it away from their spot and set it right back down. So you have to have something that's small enough to where they have to get the whole thing in their mouth to be able to set the hook. So, that's kind of how that one started too. Most of my patterns, pretty much everything I tie comes from somewhere else. And I would argue that from what most people are tying is coming from somewhere else. It's you're changing in an existing pattern to make it something more suitable to what you're fishing for or where you're fishing or both.
Well, when that's a kind of fine line, how much change is required for it to be considered a new fly?
I don't know. I'm not the expert. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's. I don't know that there's a rule on that. Like, there's only a certain combination of materials that you can put together. Like, there's a finite number. It's a big number, but there's a finite number of materials you can put together to form a fly, basically. I mean, this has been around for a long time. It's all been done already. Like, there's very few new materials, like truly new materials that are coming out now.
Kind of going along with that, there's only so many materials and only so many ways to tie them in, you know?
Yeah,
so a marabou wing's a marabou wing. It doesn't get any different than that.
I mean, and I'm sure somebody tied a lunch money before I did, but there's other work that goes into designing a fly pattern besides just the combination of materials that you're choosing to tie and the order you're tying them in. It's getting the fly to act right and designing the colors and getting, there's a lot that goes into this stuff besides just lashing it all on the hook and throwing it in the water. So what makes it a new pattern? I don't know. It's that combination of materials tied for those specific fish in this specific way. I can't tell you, you can't change one thing on a fly and just call it a brand new pattern. I got accused of taking the lunch money from other people. It's just, just one of those things that happens in the sport.
Well, apparently Harris has been accused of knocking your patterns off.
Well,
that's good. I mean, the cycle continues.
Yeah. Everything I tie that's small, people will say that looks like a Rio Getter. I'm like, yeah, you know what, it does. That's because it's there's only so many
Rio Getter
different
looks
things
like everything.
Yeah, I didn't name it. It just looks like a Rio Getter. Or anytime I tie a streamer with a dubbing head on it, an untrimmed dubbing head. It could be, Matt, articulated with a marabou tail, and it's still called a lunch money.
It's a lunch money.
That's a lunch money. I'm like, all right, dude.
I appreciate people looking out, but like,
that does say a lot. People respect you a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what that's stemming from.
I guess I appreciate it, but even I got it from somewhere, so I didn't I changed it to a synthetic head instead. Oh, actually, Charlie uses a synthetic head on his Gonga because he makes it out of polar fiber, so that's not even. It's just a different material that was. Laser dub was fairly new at the time. It had been out for maybe a year or so, and I saw. Mike Schmidt, he's a big production tire, does English choice flies. He does like Michigan style streamers for bigger brown trout. I think he lives down in Florida now, but he's still tying a good bit. And that's I saw him use it for the first time. I was like, oh, this would be killer for what I'm trying to do, because you get that stuff wet and it's a little translucent. You can kind of see through it. It's really good to be able to blend colors around. It's a great material. One of the best, I would say, one of the best materials in all of fly tying, especially for what we fish for.
I agree 100%. And the blending thing, you can get so many different color variations. I see a lot of people tie with laser dub and they're not blending. I'm like, man, you're missing out. Because you can do so many things. Yeah.
There's another guy. He has a dubbing that's very similar called Magnum Dub, and I actually started to like it a little bit better. He does a bunch of different shades of it. His name's Aaron. He's a really good guy.
Is it Laterras?
Latera,
yeah. I've got some of his stuff.
Yeah, his stuff's really good. He has a bunch of different color blends that I really like, and I've started using it a lot more. So plug to him. His stuff is very reasonably priced as well. You can get like a giant Ziploc bag for
it's like
not very much. Yeah, it's not very much at all. So lifetime supply.
He also has a material. It's just like you're saying. It's like laser dub, but it's like 5 inches long. It's huge.
I think it's like Predator dub or something. I actually have some on order from him right now. He's working on a big order for me of that kind of stuff.
Nice.
So there's another guy. His name's Tony. He does a site called Nightmare Musky Flies. He does a material called Titan Dub, which is a longer dub, and it has that hairline, it's similar to the hairline like ripple ice fiber that's in it, and it looks really good on big flies too. So there's a lot of materials out there now that weren't necessarily available when I came up with the lunch money. So there's there's better ways or different ways you can do things now that you didn't. I mean, I was using markers and laser dub to get the effect I wanted and still do.
So how much did the lunch money, as you were designing it or developing it, how much did it change like over a period until you finally came to the like, how long do you think you went designing it before you finally got to your final product?
I don't know. There's probably a dozen different iterations of it to where I start, if the Gonga's over here and the lunch money's over here, kind of where I started, I changed the head to be like a craft fur head instead of polar fiber because we didn't have any polar fiber in the shop. And then I changed the hook to be hooked down. Then I, swapped out the marabou tail and the hackle body for just a zonker strip that's also palmered up, and then swapped the head again to laser dub, and then added the marker features, the throat color and the barring on top, which he has on the original pattern too. So it went through, and I changed the hook like 4 or 5 different times, and still we'll change it up. The original one was on a TMCO 8089, which is a little bass stinger hook. They made it down to a size 12, which sounds really small, but I bought all of the last ones they have. They have a giant thing of like several hundred in case I ever want to tie anything on that hook again. But it was a cool little hook, kind of short shank bronze hook. It looked, and this was before the B10S was as popular as it is. So we didn't have that many. Again, everything initially was geared towards trout fishing and stuff like that. And this was, I would say this is right when the streamer kind of fishing kind of started taking off. You could say it started with like Kelly Gallup in like the 90s, but before the internet and fly fishing communities were as popular as they are on the internet, this was kind of when everything was people were like, oh, you can fish bigger flies, and we started getting fly lines developed with bigger heads on them, so you could cast these bigger flies without having to be a world-class caster. And a lot has changed in fly fishing in a really short amount of time. So
Matt, let's say that Zach wanted to he has a pretty famous fly called a sparkle fart.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's say he wanted for this fly to be sold commercially at like Umpqua or any of the other like Montana Fly Company or anything. What is the process that someone has to go through to get their fly into like a fly catalog that shops can order?
So they have like a whole selection process. I can speak about the Umpqua part just because that's really the only one I'm familiar with, but I'm sure MFC or Rainey's is pretty similar. You basically, Umpqua, I tied I think 6 of each color in each size. And so I went all out. I had my wife's help, and I actually put them all in a giant shadow box and mailed. Like the shadow box was like this big. It was like the size, like bigger than a book, like a large picture frame, but then like elongated on the top, and like. It cost me like $300 to ship it to outside of Denver, and they got it. And Banning was the rep at the time. This was before I worked for him, and he was like, "That's probably the nicest submission they've ever gotten in their entirety of being around." So I like labeled them all. I still have a picture of it somewhere, but I like labeled them all and like matted the labeling, like it looked like legit. So I tied up that many, and it was like ended up being like 2 dozen flies, something like that, and submitted to them. And they have. So from what I understand about how the business works, like the bottom X% of sales of those flies are cut out every year to make room to bring new ones in, because they can't just keep bringing new stuff and new stuff and new stuff. So they have like their rep meeting is how it used to happen, where all the reps come up there and they all basically vote on the patterns that they want to see go into the catalog for the next, and they're thinking like 3 to 5 years. It's not, this is going to be for next year, because there's a long lead time with this stuff, because they send, they say, okay, we're going to take your pattern, congrats, all this stuff. Here's what we need. And you have to list out the recipe and the exact steps you take to tie it, like down to the very last detail. So when they submit it to their factories overseas, which was, I don't remember where Umka specifically were, but a lot of them are in like Asia, basically, Thailand, which that makes sense, right? Thailand.
Oh,
that makes perfect sense.
Man,
I don't know why. I don't know why I never thought of that pun or used it, but that was
that's what I'm remembering. But my memory, I'm almost 40 now, so my memory's starting to fail me. So you go through that whole process with getting prototypes from them. I have the Rio Getter prototypes in here somewhere too, that I just got back. But you get prototypes, you go through like a back and forth about, okay, this is perfect, this needs to be changed, lengthen this, shorten this, and you may go through several iterations of that before you land on, okay, this is good. Put them into production, and from there, that's a multi-year process usually, because you're going back and forth between Amqua, and they're going back and forth to their factories saying, okay, change this, send us some more prototypes. And I got prototypes from they have 2 or 3 different fly tying factories, but it's people tying the flies. So if any of this was machine made, if people could figure out how to do that, I would be the first to sign up. Like, sign me up. Let AI tie some flies for me. Like, I'm down. So you're working with people. There's a lot that goes into it. So it's a multi-year process, and it ended up being really cool. I still think they use too much dubbing on the commercial ones. We've talked about it a couple times, trying to get them to lighten up, because I had to find like the right amount to be able to invert that hook, because you don't want to use. You can go heavier on the eyes to invert it, but then you end up making a bigger splash in the water. And if you're fishing some of our shallow hill country stuff, that spooks the fish. So, I had it kind of just right, and I can't tell you the amount that there is on there. I just know when I do it that it's right or it's wrong. Most people I see when they tie like their first couple, like they've used a whole pack of senyos on the top and the bottom, and you throw it out there and the fly just floats along on the top.
Matt, it's funny that you say that you just know. I read this article. So I used to read a lot of articles in like fly fishing magazines when I was at the store and it was slow. Mm-hmm. And there's only one article that has stuck with me, and that I think about fairly often. And it's a guy who describes fly fishing, fly tying as like make like his grandma making biscuits, and that she doesn't use a recipe. She just knows how much more flour it takes, and she just knows the ingredients, and it's just like she's done it so much. There's not like an exact recipe for any of this or an exact thing that you should do. It's just kind of like, you try it didn't work, so you adjust, and then over time doing that enough, you kind of fall into this pattern of, well, I know how much Senyo's laser dub it takes for a perfect head, but it's hard for me to explain that to the next person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great analogy, because that's how I explain fly tying to people. It's like cooking. You go through different stages. You go through like the burnt toast stage where you're trying to learn, and that's your sandworm worms and your woolly buggers. You're trying to learn how to cook, so you're making toast and mac and cheese, and then you're like, okay, I think I got this, and you find a cookbook or some recipes, and you go by that, and then you go by fly tying recipes, and you're just okay, and that process lasts a while. You're in that stage for a long time usually, and then you're like, okay, I know how these materials work, let me try subbing some stuff out and some other stuff in, and it's the same way in cooking as it is fly tying. I feel like you go through that kind of same process to kind of develop your own style of flies, by subbing stuff out, and you end up having a distinctive look to your flies after you've been doing it for a while. That I can pick out. You can show me pictures of flies for the most part, and I can tell you who tied them, because in terms of like people that I communicate with pretty regularly, because everybody has their own pretty distinct style. Like I would know a Zach Harris fly if I saw one because it would look like mine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know what? I'm going to wear that as a badge of honor. Okay? So do you think, so if Zach wanted to submit his fly, what expectations would you set to get out of that? Like, are you looking to do it to get a paycheck, or is it more just to say, I have a signature fly?
I mean, it can be both. Everybody does it for different reasons, I think. It's always nice to have mailbox money coming in that you don't have to really, like, that's, you're set up on royalties. So, like, every amount of flies I sell, you get a cut of that. That's how it works. So, I mean, I've already done the work for that, and I just get a check every quarter. It's not usually a ton, but it's enough to go to dinner. It's something. Nobody's getting rich doing that kind of stuff unless your name's like John Barr and you came up with a Copper John, or Charlie Craven, with his 5 million patterns that are all amazing. Like, I think it can be a little bit of both, but a lot of it is, a lot of people do it to boost their guide service or boost, to get their name out there more. It's a good marketing tool for sure. To have your name in a fly catalog and have a popular pattern is definitely a feather in the hat, I would say.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh man, I had a question for you and I just lost it. Either you guys got anything? I've been asking a lot of questions.
I think we're at a.
Oh, I remember. When you mentioned Charlie Craven, I was going to ask you, who do you look up to as fly tires, or who do you like to keep up with?
Oh, I mean, there's tons. There's so many great tires, and especially in this age of like the internet being what it is, and Instagram and Facebook and all that. There's tons of people I keep up with. That's like how I keep up with the community back over there that I was a part of. Like I'm not there anymore, but I live vicariously through Chase's Instagram posts and Odom's cart pics, and I was like, I wish I was doing that.
Yeah.
There's so many great tires. Some names that come to mind are Mike Schultz up in Michigan is a great. He and his whole fly shop just have some fantastic. They fish a lot of smallmouth up there, so they're fishing big stuff, bigger streamers than you would think of, but for smallmouth. But I mean, some of the patterns they kind of come up with are really unique, I would say, and have a very specific style in mind. Geez, you're just gonna put me on the spot. I'm gonna have to get my phone out and just start scrolling through Instagram and see who pops up. Let's see. Oh, here's one that is the first guy. Alan Campbell does some great hair work. There's some fantastic hair tires. Like Pat Cohen's not really tying anymore, but he was. I would say he like almost single-handedly brought back like the hair tying and deer hair bugs and stuff like that. And there's several really good hair tires out there. Brandon Bales is another one. He ties some great stuff. He's over in Alabama. That worked one time. Let's see if it'll work again if I just start scrolling through and seeing. I love Charlie Craven stuff. He ties some of the best. He's the most versatile, best tire. Like he can tie anything good, I think. Oh, come on, Instagram. Don't fail me now. Just seeing like people's golf club pics and stuff. That's like my other hobby now is playing golf. I'm just terrible at it.
Are you getting out at least once a week?
Oh yeah, I get out and play golf once a week. I live like 5 minutes from the course here.
Nice.
So I get out and play with my dad and leave hating the game more every time.
I think that's I don't want to spend too much time on golf, but I think once a week is the minimum to maintain like at least That would be my thing. Is like if I was I used to be a big golfer. If I was to get into golf again, I would have to at least play once a week.
Oh, I'm terrible. Like I'm just abysmal, but it's fun. Sometimes like. All right, I'll just say one thing about golf. I think this is what appeals to me so much about golf is there's no other sport that you can do where you can feel like a professional for like one shot. Like I can hit this. It will take me 1,000,000 shots, but there's going to be one where me and Tiger Woods hit the same shot. Like, and you can't do that. Like, none of y'all can go out and hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball coming from a major league pitcher. Like, nobody's gonna go bowl a 300. Is that the max score in bowling? I think that's right.
Yeah.
No, like, golf is the only sport that can make you feel like superhuman just for a second. And like anybody has the ability to go out or make that shot or hit that or make that putt or hit that shot. Like it's in all of us. It just I haven't figured out how to make it come out yet.
Do you ever sneak a fly rod onto the golf course ponds and throw a couple casts? I
used to. So that's how when I first started, I grew up here in Louisiana, being on the golf course that we have here locally, and I would sneak a little fly rod in and, hit it in the water on purpose and go catch a bass or two. And we used to sneak on there at night and do the same thing, like go out with the fly rods. And I hooked a bat one time. That was kind of cool.
You hooked a bat?
Yeah, I hooked a bat.
And you didn't get rabies?
That was on a farm pond close here, not the golf course, but yeah, it was on like a little popper. It like swooped down right at dusk, and like as it was like unfolding, the loop was unfolding under the water. It just grabbed it and was flying around with it. And I was like, nope. It just I was like, no, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah,
it was just a little guy, but I mean, nope.
Yeah,
no thanks.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Man, that's a first. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody.
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody catching a bat.
We
had a guy at Real Recovery caught a turtle, legit caught a turtle.
The only other weird thing I've caught, and it's not a weird thing because it was just a fish, but all right, so I was fishing the Guad. This was maybe 6 or 8 years ago. We were fishing down at River Bluff, if you know where that is, downriver a little bit during trout season. I was nymph fishing, and indicator went over under. I set the hook and fighting a fish. It jumped like 2 or 3 times, just a rainbow. And I get the fish in, and I can't reel anymore. And I look up, and I'm like trying to, you're trying to net the fish while you're playing it. And I finally get the fish in the net, and my rod's like bent over double because something is like jammed up against the tip. And my fly had hooked a swivel that was attached to a line, and the fish had the hook in its mouth. It was like a bait hook. Somebody had bait fishing. So this fish had jumped like 2 or 3 times, and somehow I still had, I'm fishing like a size 20, like 2-bit hooker. Like I can't, it's one of those inexplicable things that I don't know how that happened, but it did. I had several people there that were like, what just happened? Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would have rather won the lottery, but that was still a cool story.
Wow.
So, Matt, what are your for people that don't tie flies? What are your if they wanted to get into it? What are your maybe like top 3-ish tips for a new fly tire?
Ooh, this is good. I would say hook up with, find like a local community, or if you don't have one, there's plenty of like internet ones available. Find like a group of people that share the same excitement that you have for it, or find a mentor. A lot of people who are in this what's all right,
I'm sorry. I'm reading the comments on the live stream, and a buddy said, somebody said bowled 175 once, but with bumpers, going back to the bowling comments.
Yeah, I bowled like a 23 one time. So it takes all kinds.
I was checking for questions for you. If anybody want to ask anything and got caught off guard by that comment.
It's like, I didn't feel like anything was that funny.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, I would tell people, like, plug in with the community. You know, there's a great one in, you know, where you guys are, like all the way down the I-35 corridor. There's tons of different communities meeting up at breweries or fly stores or wherever, and just go hang out and plug in. And you know, I would tell you, if you're gonna do it, spend the money on quality tools starting out. I know you may not feel like you're able to do that maybe from you're kind of wondering maybe if this is a hobby that's going to stick and you don't want to drop $400 or $500 on stuff, but it saves so much frustration. Like, get a good vise, get like a Renzetti Traveler or a Peak or something like that. Like, spend a couple $100, get something that's not super frustrating to work with. Because if you're spending cheap, if you're not spending a ton of money, you're getting cheap tools, and cheap tools work against you. Spend a little bit of money, get some, you know, Dr. Slick scissors and a good ceramic tube bobbin, and, you know, spend money on materials. I would advise going and spending, you know, money in a big box store and just buying a kit like I did. That was a gift given to me, and if I started over, I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't do it that way again. Like, a lot of the materials that come in those are pretty subpar. Like, go somewhere where where people know what they're talking about and can help you. And if you don't have a place like that close, there's a lot on the internet. And, you know, call somebody up, and it's really easy for me to talk about fly tying because I enjoy it. Like, people, you call a shop and ask for tips on materials and flies, and most of them, if they don't have somebody on the phone that knows about fly tying, they know how, they'll put somebody on and be like, here, you know, here's what you need. Here's what you're looking for materials for a woolly bugger, and, you know, here's what kind of hacker you want. You know, it's really easy to get into this and be just completely overwhelmed by the amount of choice that you have. And materials and tools and stuff like that. So find people that you can connect with that know, you know, what they're talking about, that can guide you. I think it'd make the experience a lot better. There's been very few people that I've taught how to tie flies who have really gotten into it who don't tie anymore. Like, it's just something that you really enjoy. Most people, once they get into it, if you like to fly fish, you're probably going to like tying flies too. It's like adult arts and crafts.
It is.
Well, it's a huge reward at the end of it. I mean, catching a fish on your own fly. I mean, that's
yeah. It's like I said, I can still remember the first one I caught on a fly, and that was 20 years ago at least.
Yeah.
More than that, 25. So my memory doesn't go back that far in most situations, but it does for stuff like that.
We got some good questions in now.
Okay.
Now, what is a tying tool that you think is a must-have that most people wouldn't have?
Ooh, I got a good one. Hang on.
Oh, I'm curious.
Oh, show and tell.
Okay.
Now we're talking.
I get asked this one a lot. All right, this is a Stonfo thread splitter.
Okay.
I'm gonna open it. This is my backup one. So, doing dubbing loops, especially on like carpet bombs, a dubbing loop holds up so much better than just a regular, you know, dub thread. So this little guy has a needle that pops out of the end. It's not going to focus, but it makes splitting your thread, like, it's got a little groove. You put the thread in the groove and you push the spring-loaded thing down, and it splits your thread in half. So you can stick dubbing or materials or whatever in the middle of your thread, spin your bobbin, and it spins it all up, and now you have a, you know, dubbing noodle basically, where you can make it like a buggy looking fly super easily without having to make like a split thread or a 2-strand dubbing loop. That would be probably my first recommendation, and it's a pretty niche tool. Like, this is, but I find that I just use it all the time. That's why I have a second one, because that's my backup one in case I ever lose my first one. Good question. That's a really good question. There's several other cool tools besides just your standard kind of stuff. I'm trying to see if anything jumps out to me on my bench.
Yeah, that kind of falls into another question. What top tying tools you can't do without? It kind of similar to that other question, but
let's see. Oh no, I get my tying thing.
more show and tell, guys. This is great.
Yeah,
I know,
this is
right?
like I'm like salivating over here. I don't know if you noticed, but I put the vice down or put the tools down like
For the
5
first
minutes
time
in. Yeah.
I know.
in weeks.
Yeah,
I'm like, I see Zach's face right now.
All right, so I just grabbed this because it just has a bunch of stuff left over in it. A good bobbin is something that I would definitely recommend, and there's a lot of different kinds. This is the one I probably tie the most with. It's just a short Dr. Slick ceramic tube. I like these shorter ones. I can't tell you why. Everybody has a preference, but they have different lengths. I also really like these. This is a Tiemco bobbin. It's a little more dainty. It's the only thing I can say, but it's really smooth. The bearing, like it doesn't have bearings, but like the resistance between it and the thread spool, like the thread flows nicely off of it. A good pair of scissors. I use these Dr. Slick like razor ones pretty much constantly. Another company that makes really good scissors is starts with an R. Renomid, I think, is the name of it. They make some really great scissors. Don't skimp on your scissors. If you're gonna buy a bad pair, just use those for like tying, like cutting wire and stuff like that. But like spend $20 and get a good pair of scissors, and it will save you a lot of frustrations. Trying to see what else is on here. I get asked. Some people want to ask about like whip finishing, if it's quicker to do it by hand or with the tool. I still use the tool even though I can do it by hand. It's just personal preference on that kind of stuff. A good like dubbing brush. So, well, no, that's a bodkin. I got a dubbing brush. Any kind of like gun cleaning brush, like a brass metal brush, to be able to like tease out fibers and stuff like that is really good. Yeah, something exactly like that. Trying to think of stuff.
Copying him again, Zach. Copying him again.
Yeah, is that my brush? Did you take it to Trout Fest? You're looking for that.
Hey, so I'm curious. I noticed your bobbins are all like traditional style. What do you think about like the adjustable tension
I
bobbins? Yeah.
Well, that's my whip finishers on there too. Look at that. I got like a whole thing going on. Yeah, so I have a right bobbin too. This is one I use for deer hair because I can put a lot of tension on it.
Yeah.
And this is like gel spun thread on there. And then like the Schmane ones that have like the little adjustable thing.
Oh, the little knob on the side.
Yeah, where you can adjust the tension. Like these are all really cool. I have some of the Norvice ones that are automatic that you have to. They're a pain because you have to like load them with the drill, but they're spring loaded inside. So like when you release the bobbin, it like goes back up on its own. Really cool. There's all kinds of super quirky, really cool stuff in this sport. And like I said, you can just spend a ton of money just buying fly tying tools, but stuff to start with, get a good bobbin, a good pair of scissors, a whip finisher. Dr. Slick sells like good tool sets that you'll spend like $40 on or something like that. It has one of everything that you have to have starting out, or what I would really recommend starting out with. That's a way to start out with. But you know, it's just like anything. Like this sport appeals to collectors. Like you end up just collecting everything, materials, hooks, books, just everything, just because you like, oh, well, maybe I'll use that one day, or I have an idea for that or something like that. That's why the sport is so appealing, I think, to people is just the collecting shiny things. We're like birds. What
tools or fly tying accessories are not necessary and that you shouldn't spend money on?
I got one. The razor blade
I know what you're
holder
gonna say.
that the Orvis manager sold me about 5 or 6 years ago.
Wait, that one. What tool? I
have like 3 of those.
Dude, they are lethal. And if you're not careful, it flings razors across the room.
Yeah, mine's done that. All right, so it holds like the double-sided razor blades. You can put it in there and you adjust the tension on it and it bends it like more or less. But if you bend it too much, it shoots it across the room and you can embed the razor in your wall. I did use one for a while, but I went back to just holding it with my, bending it with my fingers. You get a more consistent bend using the tool, because I'm like, just, I don't know.
Just kind of eyeing it.
Yeah, just eyeballing it, and I trim off half my deer hair head and have to start over. Just is what it is.
Yeah,
that's why I don't tie a whole lot of hair, because I get frustrated with it and just want to start over. I can't think of anything that I would say is. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that I like. The razor blade thing is, you don't have to have that to start out. Like, I would say you don't really need a hair packer unless you're tying a bunch of hair bugs. There's plenty of other tools I'm sure that I have on my bench over there. But I look at them now. I'm like, oh, I use that for everything. I don't want to get rid of it. It's mine. You can't have it.
I think it depends on what it is you're going to be tying, though, right? If you're going to be tying a bunch of bass flies, you don't need.
You don't need a dry fly hackle gauge for tying a bunch of bass flies, and you don't need there's something I'm sure you don't need a hair packer for tying trout flies, like, for the most part. Like, there's some technique specific tools that you could probably avoid until you're actually tying that style of fly pretty often, I would say.
We got another question for you, Matt, from a listener or viewer. Is there a specific vise that you prefer? And I'm going to add a part 2 to that.
Sure.
What vise have you tied the most flies on?
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 vices right now. I'm one of those people, just like with tools, like, I'll buy just about anything that I feel like I can tie. It will give me an advantage in tying, whether it be a different style or holding a hook different or something like that. I've probably tied most of my flies on a Renzetti Master that I've had. I've had 2 over the years, and I've probably tied the most on that. What I'd recommend starting out, a Renzetti Traveler is a great option. I think it's one of the best bang for the buck vices out there, especially if you're not sure what kind of flies you're going to be tying. It holds a pretty wide range of hook sizes.
Yeah, that's what I use. That's my day-to-day.
Peak makes a great one, in the kind of the same price range. If you're going to step it up just a hair, like Dynaking's vices are hard to beat. They're a little hard to come by right now because the company got bought by, I think, the parent company for like Able. Somebody eating some candy over there? Like, what's going on? I just heard like a little it sounded like somebody unwrapping a Werther's original.
That's weirdly specific, man.
It sounded like somebody's grandma just showed up and was like,
Zach, when you turned, I think your microphone. Like,
that's what it was. It just sounded like crinkly cellophane.
It really did. It was like a spot on. So it was like,
oh, that's weird. That explains why I didn't hear it.
Yeah. Dynaking makes great vices. Regal makes great vices. It all depends on what you're going to be tying. For when I say our area, if you're going to be tying warm water, salt water mostly, it's hard to go wrong with any of those.
Matt, was it you that was telling me that you had to stop tying on your Regal because you were tying so many flies that your hand... it was like cramping up so much from opening it.
Yeah, I had like an RSI, a repetitive stress injury, just from being able to like doing this over and over all day. Because I would, I don't just tie when I was production tying. I don't just tie one fly and move on. I'm step tying, so I'm putting all the hooks in, tying the eyes on, taking the hooks out, doing all that. So for one fly, I'm squeezing those jaws like 10 times or a dozen times or something, and eventually I got like this crazy pain in my forearm from it, and I had to swap. I love Regal vices. I make great vices, but so Chris Fowler has my Regal now, and he, like when you clamp on that thing, it's a lot. That revolution I had with the stainless jaws, it's, you know, this arm was a lot bigger than this arm because I was doing this all day.
Wait, so I got a quick question. I actually did not know that when you're like production tying, that you are doing like one step at a time. So you're literally like you're tying on the eyes on say a dozen flies, and then like are you snipping the thread each time, or are you keeping like really?
So how I would do, say, lunch monies is I would count out, you know, let's say I'm doing 2 dozen tan and white lunch monies. So I'll count out my hooks. I'll count out my eyes. I'll do all my hooks to eyes, eyes to hooks, the other way around. Glue all those just a little bit of super glue to keep them all in. And then like by the time I get around to doing the last one, the first one's dry. So I'll put it back in the vise. I'll do zonker tails, the body, and rubber legs. So I'll do all that, and that a lot of that is just for consistency. Like if I'm doing the same thing over and over, because I want all my flies to act identical in the water, especially if I'm selling them to other people. So a lot of that is for consistency reasons. And you know, doing all the dubbed heads at one time, you're going to use pretty much the same amount of laser dub each time because you're used to it. So for lunch monies, I was doing them in, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, 4 different. So I'll do
like 4 chunks for each.
Yeah, 4 chunks. So I'll do the eyes to hooks, then I'll do the zonkers and legs, then I'll do the heads, and then I'll come back and do the marker work, like doing the barring or whatever on top. That's not really how I tie anymore because I'm just not production tying. I'll do them one at a time now, but. When I was really cranking them out, that's, you know, I would do, you know, 10 to 12 dozen of those a day. That way,
doing them that way is faster, or is it strictly just because it keeps that consistency?
I think it's both. It was both for me. You know, getting all the materials out, you know, staging your materials, and I encourage people to think like that. If you're tying up, you know, a dozen flies for your box, you know, there's no reason you can't do it that way too. So, I have where's my material holder? Oh, here it is. Hang on. So I have like this chunk of, this is like a material prepper. So this is just foam. This is a wood base, and there's slits in here. So what I would do is, you know, cut all my zonkers to length. So I would have, you know, I have 13 slits in this one because my rule was, every dozen I tied one for me, typically, because I always wanted to have flies in my box to be able to go fish too. The first couple of years I was doing it, I never had any flies and didn't go fishing because I never tied them for myself. So that started being my rule. So I'll, you know, for lunch monies, I'll put all those legs in the slits and all the rabbit. I'll do it in reverse order. So the last material is on the bottom. I didn't do it with like the dubbing because there's no reason to. You just have a pile of dubbing on your desk that you just grab from. But having your legs separated out into pairs already to where you can just grab them and tie them on the hook.
And already cut to length.
Yeah, already cut to length. Your zonker's the same way. You know, it just speed any kind of time saver, and that kind of, you know, because you're literally paying your bills one fly at a time. Anything you can make it to go faster without sacrificing the quality or an integrity of the fly is something I would do for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry for that rabbit hole, guys. I was just like,
that's a good question.
I did not know that's the way it was done. It's cool.
You know,
everybody has different ways of doing it for sure. You don't have to do it that way.
I guess because I've gone down the fly tying rabbit hole, I was a little shocked to hear you ask that question. I figured that was something everybody kind of knew was a thing.
Honestly, I thought production tires just like they got their vise, they finished one fly and went right to the next one for the most part, you know. So I was like, I didn't even know that was an option. So I figured that you had kind of like staged your stuff kind of ready, you know, cut everything to length. But no, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Matt, what's your favorite lunch money color?
Tan and white.
Tan and white.
That's the original. You know, I tie them in. I've probably done 30 different colors over the years, but tan and white's the one I always have in my box ready to go. It's hard. It's hard to pick a second one after that, but the tan and white's easily my favorite one.
With the tan and white, were you aiming to imitate anything specific, or was that just a color you thought would be good?
No, it's just I used to fish the Llano probably the most out of anywhere, and tan just always works. Tan and white especially always works on the Llano, and I think it's just the way the stream bottom is, being that like pink granite. Everything kind of blends in with that bottom. That's why I tell people, if you're not sure what kind of flies to throw in a new spot or something, just find something that'll match against the bottom, because anything the fish are eating are going to be camouflaged against that. So you got a bunch of grass and moss and stuff in the bottom, throw something olive, or on the Llano where it's that pink kind of tan granite, throw something tan. Like you it's hard to go wrong doing that kind of thing. Anyway, I didn't really design it to look like anything in particular other than kind of a bait fish. But I mean, you look at the crawfish you find out there are the same thing. They're kind of tan or like a brownish color, or like a light olive. They're all matching the stream bottom. So a lot of the flies I tie are pretty general imitations, I would say, of stuff, instead of trying to imitate like one specific, like just trying to imitate a shad. I'm trying to imitate a bunch of different bait fish at once and let the fish decide kind of what they think it is.
I don't know if you remember, but my biggest color order every time I ordered from you, pink and white brunch
pink
bunnies.
And white. Yep, I remember.
Pink and white.
Yeah.
Pink and white.
I feel like pinks and purples and stuff like that is really underutilized. Like, I still take a lot of inspiration in my colors from the conventional bass world. Like, there's so much money that goes into people designing color schemes and stuff like that for, that's a whole different, much bigger market than fly fishing will ever be. But they're designing, stuff with a purpose, and there's a lot of science behind what they're doing. Oh, my internet's saying that it's bad. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still here.
You're still here. We're good.
Trying to reconnect. I was like, Anyway, so I look to that a lot of times when I'm designing like bait fish stuff specifically. If I'm not trying to imitate like a bluegill, if I'm trying to throw something crazy like pink and white, or blue and chartreuse, or that's where I'm looking, is the conventional market and what they're doing with stuff for sure. But yeah, pink and white's underused. I started fishing a peanut butter and jelly one, so like kind of brown over purple, especially for redfish here, fishes really well. Purple.
There was a color that you did like a limited release of. I think I ordered like one batch. It was like a Joker color.
Ooh,
that was like it's like black and purple and pink
with like a little bit of pink. Yeah.
That was a color I saw that Andreas Andersson over in Sweden did for some of his streamer patterns when he was posting a lot. It's like, oh, that's cool. I could turn that into a lunch money pretty easily. Just trying to think outside the box and stuff, because people talk so much about matching the hatch, and in the trout world, that's really pretty important. I would say in the bass world, it can be important, but I talk about unmatching the hatch too. Like, there's nothing in nature that looks like like chartreuse. That's not really a color that exists that you see a lot of, but it really works. And stuff like fire tiger is kind of exaggerating those colors and triggers. I think is part of like designing successful flies too.
Yeah. So Matt, why? Let's talk about, because we got up to the point where you started tying commercially. So let's talk about kind of like why you decided to stop tying commercially.
Oh, I mean, I moved back home to Louisiana.
Okay.
Had opportunity to come back and work in our family family forestry business that's been around for 50 years. And that's what I've been doing the past almost 3 years now, is learning that side of things and learning a new industry and how all that pieces together. And it was just a good time. I was getting kind of burnt out on tying, and this came up kind of in the middle of 21. We were kind of looking for a change from Austin, and it all just, as things do, just kind of worked out the way it did.
Yeah. How many flies were you tying? I know you told us before we started recording, but for the listeners, how many flies were you tying a year?
About 14,000, 12 to 14,000. Probably 95% of it were, warm waters, bigger nymph streamer stuff like carpet bombs, lunch monies, stuff like that. For all those I did some special order stuff on the side sometimes just for the heck of it, stuff that I wouldn't normally do. Like flies, but people going like bone fishing or to Belize or destination trips, and it's interesting tying for fish that you've never really fished for and having to do that kind of research and looking over stuff that you just don't really know a whole lot about.
If you had to guess how many flies you've tied in your life, what do you think you would be at right now?
Let's say I tied production for, 5 years and 14 a year. I'm probably over 100,000 pretty easily, I would say. Yeah, I'd feel comfortable saying that and it not being a. Sorry, my wife was calling me during the middle.
No, you're good. You're good.
I would be comfortable saying I've done over 100,000 and not being too much of an exaggeration. Pretty confidently say that.
So I've got a question.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, go ahead, Wayne. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to ask how many flies do you think that you've tied? I was going to ask how many flies you think you've tied in your life.
Easily like 250,000. Like,
man, no. How many of those are mine?
They all are.
No, because you're consistently like I tie one fly a day, right? That's what you always say. I tie one fly a day. Maybe you do like 2 or 3, but like
I try.
Would put you at like maybe like 2,000 or 3,000.
Yeah, probably nowhere near his numbers. That's for sure.
No, but my point is that you guys both are some of like my personal like most respected fly tiers. So it's like you don't have to tie that many flies as Matt ties. You can.
Well, and to be fair, like Matt, back when you were tying a bunch, and you still kind of repost some of your old stuff every now and then.
Yeah,
but like
I do.
There would be a picture of 30 of the same color lunch money, and I would just assume you tied all those in the same go, right? It's
when I would post like a pile of the same pattern, that was usually all at the same time, and then I enjoyed tying like posting like the big order shots before I would ship them out. That was a point of pride for me.
Sitting down and tying 30 of the same thing. Oh my god, man, I couldn't do it. But that kind of brings me. So tying as many flies as you had, and your 3. I would say main patterns, right? The Rio Getter, carpet bomb, and lunch money.
Yeah, I call them. When people talk about those, I call those the big 3.
The big 3.
My big 3.
All right,
yeah.
the big 3. They all use natural materials. How did you manage to stay consistent with those materials, Marabou and Rabbit Zonker? I mean, because sometimes you can buy 2 packs of Rabbit Zonker, same exact barcode and everything, but they're 2 completely different products. Like, how did you manage that?
Great question, because I mean, a lot of people tie with a bunch of synthetics because there is so much variance between natural materials. So what I would do is I had still have a relationship with Hairline and ordered everything direct from them. They kind of stopped in the recent like when I would order, like once I was getting close to the end, but I could order Rabbit like a full skin at a time. So I was ordering like, 1 pack of Rabbit that you see on a fly shop wall is like, I don't know, 3 strips or something. And I was buying like 50 strips at a time. So it's much easier to get in bulk. It's much easier to get something consistent. Same with Marabou, and I can still buy Marabou by the Hairline used to sell it by the pound. A pound of olive brown Marabou would last a very long time, because you think about, I think the packs you buy in a fly shop are like an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an ounce, and I'm not a math whiz, but you throw a bunch of numbers in there and you end up, it's like 100 and something packages of marabou is what a pound would equate to or something. I don't know. It's just a lot of feathers. So marabou is I don't have as much trouble with the rabbit because Hairline picks the best stuff to dye. I think to do the barring and stuff on, they picked like their best. And most of their stuff is really good, but like marabou especially, like I would be comfortable saying I throw out probably 30% of a bag. It's just junk, just not what I'm looking for to use. And it's not worth the time or anything like that for me to try and make a subpar material work for a pattern. If I know it's not going to work, I just chunk it. And especially with the marabou for the Rio Getters is still like this, like that chickaboo from chickens is really inconsistent. So I throw out maybe half a bag of that sometimes to get the good feathers that I want to use. I'm pretty picky about my stuff.
That's how I feel about good CDC. I throw away 10 feathers to find one good feather.
Yeah. The best CDC I use comes from Mark Pettyjohn over in Swiss. I think he's Swiss. Yeah. His stuff is like
all of his feathers are good.
Yeah. All of his stuff is like prime.
I have like one bag of it. It's a weird color though. I think I bought it on sale
like
at
a
Living Waters
color?
Actually. It was on sale at Living Waters. I think it's orange.
Oh, yeah. I think so he sells his CDC by the ounce too, which I feel like a drug dealer buying stuff by the ounce. But I mean, the CDC costs as much as drugs probably. And it's just worth it in my opinion. Like if you have the means to just like I say, invest in good tools, but buy good materials too. And most stuff you'll find in most like actual fly shops is pretty good stuff.
Yep.
And that's the benefit of shopping in person is you can go through and pick the best stuff. Like when I worked in a shop, I would put the best stuff in the very back and you would have to go find it. It wouldn't be the one in the front. And if it was still there at the end of the day, I would buy it and take it home with me.
Matt, do you use fur or synthetics from non-fly tying companies?
Probably.
Like are you buying like a material that you use fairly often, maybe from like that you source from somewhere different?
Not as much. I mean, I think especially starting out, like anybody else, I'm like, oh, I gotta save money on this. I'm gonna go to Hobby Lobby, and you find some stuff that works, but a lot of it is junk. Like it's just not made for. Like I'm thinking their craft fur specifically is just. It's not made for what we're trying to use it for. It's not long. It's not thick. Like you're causing yourself more frustration by trying to save a couple bucks instead of just buying something that was made for fly tying.
I'm gonna grab one of my craft store finds real quick. You guys carry on. I'll be right back.
But like flash and stuff like that, yeah, you could find some pretty good flash from. There's a company I just bought a bunch of flash material from that I can't remember the name of, but they're not like, they don't do like fly tying stuff. It just happens that it works really well for what we're doing. I have a ton of Snow Runner that I got from a guy over in Poland who just sent it to me, like garbage bags full of like dyed Snow Runner. But he does it like specifically for fly tying, but it's not something you would normally find. That's a big like material for over in like Sweden and Finland and stuff where they're tying these giant pike flies.
What's your favorite obscure material?
Australian possum,
yeah. Like on the Rio Bandito.
Yeah,
what most people would
like
know.
Chris Rio Bandito. Yeah, it's a really good material. I'm trying to think of anything else that's fairly obscure. I don't know. I there's a lot of stuff that I tie with. That I mean, I have a whole pile, like a giant bag full of like coyote pelts and fox fur and like whole skins of stuff that I like. But I mean, most of that is pretty. I don't think I have anything like real weird. I'm trying to think. I mean, I have way too many dry fly haggles for as few dry flies as I actually tie. I just think,
but those are the most fun material to collect. I think. Like I don't tie a lot of dry flies, but if I see like nice dry fly hackles, it's like I need those, even though I don't need them.
So I heard a rumor. I'm going to interrupt. A rumor a while back that pseudo hair was going to stop being made, or they were going to stop making pseudo hair again. And I started noticing it going on clearance on a lot of websites. So I kind of panicked because I used tan pseudo hair for my crab like tails.
Yeah.
So I went to Joanne Fabrics, and it's damn near identical. I've got pseudo hair for life. It's folded in half.
I'm gonna have to go find that. That's awesome.
I think it was like $20, and it's basically the same thing. It's a little bit different, but it's close enough.
Close enough. Yeah, they have. There's a lot of like fake. It's like it's supposed to be like animal fur replacement kind of craft fur looking stuff that they have. I've gotten some embroidery thread from there that I use for certain things. I don't have anything too weird. I mean, I have all kinds of. I mean, I'm looking at a thing full of parrot feathers I have for classic flies. I guess that's pretty weird, but not for the classic guys. Like I have macaw feathers and stuff. I don't know. I have all kinds of stuff. You name it, I probably have it.
That's cool. Macaw. I'd like to get my hands on some of those. I know a guy that uses macaw. He uses the fibers just for tails, but one side's red and one side's blue. It's really cool.
Yeah, the ones I have are blue and yellow.
Nice.
But yeah, there's like red and there's all kinds of, and they shed them, so like you don't have to kill the poor bird. It's not like harvesting dry fly hackles. You guys remember the hair hackle craze?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I worked at Bass Pro when that happened. And freaking Steven Tyler, man.
Yeah, it tried to make a comeback a couple of times, and I guess it never really caught on again. But, man, that was when I first started working in Chris's shop, and, like, we couldn't get anything from whiting because they were people were just putting them in their hair, and people were like selling. I know a guy who sold like his entire collection. He was on Whiting's pro staff, and he made like $30,000 or something from just from selling his feathers that he had stashed away. So
the way to do that would be go on eBay and just like sell like 10 feathers, 10 feathers, but for like $10.
Well,
so it's like, oh man,
it got so big that Whiting started doing these things. Instead of bugger packs, they did fashion packs, and they were that's what they called them, and they were just like a pack of like I don't know, like 10 or 12 saddles, feathers that you could put in your hair.
Oh my God!
Sorry, I've got a visitor here. If I don't, she won't shut up. Yeah.
All right, so let's end the podcast on this. We're gonna, Matt. We fairly often play a game, and we use different categories each time.
Okay.
But where I have a list of 5 fly tires. And you are going to rank them in order from who you think is the best to who you think is the least. But I am going to give you the first name, and you have to put it on the list without knowing who the next fly tires are on the list.
Oh, the Instagram's going to get mad at me about this. Somebody's gonna get last. Sorry.
Yeah. To be fair, I didn't put you on, Matt. I thought that would be hilarious to put you as the last person.
I would put myself at 1 for sure.
So Matt is not on the list, and I didn't use any hill country tires. So,
all right. So
you should have done nothing but
these are
tires.
nationally known tires.
So what is the judging criteria, and is 5 the top one, or is 1 the top one?
I'm gonna warn
is
you,
the top.
Matt. Landon,
1 is the top.
Landon makes up the rules and changes them as the game is played.
As we go, he makes
all right,
rules.
so you want me to name who I think is best at number 1? That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Who you think is best at number 1.
But the thing is, though, he's going to give you a name, and you have to decide without knowing the other
without
4
knowing the others.
what
Right.
rank they are.
This would be your list. So after we get done, we'll discuss like, okay, this, did I do well for what I think or not? So
all right, let's go.
Okay. Number 1 is Bob Clouser.
Oh man, what is the ranking criteria? Are we talking like importance to fly tying, how good of a tyer he is, all of the above? All of the above.
I think it's kind of whatever's in your heart, really.
And one is high.
Mufasa.
One is the highest.
Yes.
Let's go 3 for Bob. Let's play it safe.
Okay. Harris, what do you got?
Oh, we're all playing? It's not just
Oh,
Matt?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I'll keep the list for you guys so you don't have to remember as well.
I'm going to have to put him at 4.
Ooh.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm going to say 4. Just because it's not my style of flies, necessarily. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 3 as well. It feels like a safe spot.
You can't copy Matt the whole time.
So okay.
I'm the only one that's allowed to copy him.
I will.
Okay. So to be fair, each time we do this, you'll say it in a different order. So
Okay.
next time Adair will go first, and then we can mix it up that way.
Fair
Okay. Number 2 is Tim Flagler.
Okay, so now I gotta do some googling.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
dude, I'm not. I tie for myself,
Yeah,
and I'm not
I
inspired
can-
by anybody. My inspiration comes from above. I don't know how else to describe it.
I'm not
but
shocked
I
that you
can't-
never
I-
Google searched a tying tutorial, actually.
I'm sure you've seen his stuff before.
Yeah, so
Probably.
what's his name again?
Tim Flagler.
Tim Flagler.
He does a lot of instructional YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Very
He
good
does-
teacher.
I think he does.
And
it for
watching his
orbits, too.
videos is like watching an episode of How It's Made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like exact like so
Okay,
good.
so I'm following him now on Instagram. All right. Well, I see a fly that looks cool. I see a bunch of other flies. I don't know if they're tied by him or not, but let's just go with vibe. So I'm going to give him a 4.
Okay. Sounds good. Harris, what you got?
I'll give him 3 for versatility.
He is a very versatile tire for sure.
See,
Okay.
this is a
I
hard
already
game to
used
play.
3.
It's a hard game to play because you don't know who's next. What if Matt Bennett's next?
No, he already said
No,
it
no,
was on
I-
the list, so...
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to change the rules on you guys.
Why not? You do every other time we play this game.
You guys just like to complain. That's all this is.
I
This
think
is
I'm gonna
let's
say-
gang up on Landon.
I'm going to say
part of the
4
show.
also.
Okay. All right. So Matt said 4. Okay. Next, we are going to go with Charlie Craven.
Oof. Oof.
And just so y'all know, this list was made before we started recording the episode. So this episode had no influence on who the tires I selected. Harris, let's go with you first.
I've got Flagler at 3 and Klauser at 4, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna put Craven at 2.
Okay.
I'm very comfortable putting Charlie at number 1 on my list.
It's
Okay.
fair.
And I'm going to go 2 as well.
Did you Google him first?
I did. but okay. However, I will say I do know who Charlie Craven is. I just had to remind myself of everything that he can tie.
Charlie,
So-
if you happen to watch this, which for some reason I doubt, I don't know. We'll see.
I'm gonna
But if
tag
you
him.
watch this,
I'll send
He's
it
going to
to
see
him.
it. I'm going to tag him.
We've been over
Okay.
this, guys. I only know local tires because of the people I meet. Okay.
All right. Next, we're going to go with Kelly Gallup.
1.
Oh,
Oh, see, I also know Kelly Gallup.
He's my
And
number
no,
1. Number
anybody
1.
can go.
Number 1.
2.
Zach Harris.
Sorry, Kelly.
I get why you would put him at number 1, and I'm going to copy Zach again. I'm going to put him at number 1.
Some poor soul's about to be number 5 on my list.
I think all of us have 5 open. Landon's about to
That's
screw
it.
us.
It is. It totally is.
Wait, Matt, you have Or did my order get screwed up? Because it's kind of auto-formatting with the numbers.
So Bob was 4, Charlie was 1, Kelly was 2. No, Tim was 4, Bob was 3. Yeah, I only have 5 open.
So everybody has 5 open.
Who's number 5?
1 second. So Matt, you did Charlie, then Kelly.
Charlie, Kelly, Bob, Tim. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, the formatting it automatically changed the numbers on me. Okay. So last on the list is Mr. Rosenbauer.
I knew you were going to say that.
Sorry, Tom.
I knew you were. Yeah. Sorry, Tom.
But is anybody mad?
I mean, I feel like I like Tom better than Klauser as far as flies go. I'm sure they're both great people.
I have met everybody on this list except Tim.
Really?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
I rode Kelly Gallup down to Colorado.
Wow.
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
That's a great
his first
story.
Guadalupe bass.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I was rowing Winston's boat. I don't have a boat, and I was rowing poorly. I didn't want that to be said. But I have one of Gallup's sex dungeons he tied at the Austin Fly Fishers meeting.
Nice.
And one of his zoo cougars. He was at Trout Fest maybe, I don't know, 8 years or so ago.
Okay. That's awesome.
We took him to Gristmill. He liked onion rings.
That's a good place to take him.
Him at one side of the spectrum, having dinner with us, and then Pat Dorsey at the other side of the spectrum. Two very, very different people, but both good guys.
I think with this list, it's hard to actually say definitively that this is who. I think subjectively, depending on who you are. These numbers are interchangeable. Honestly.
Nobody gave me any criteria,
Yeah.
so I just put numbers next to people.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on your style of flies too. I like streamers, so Kelly Gallup naturally is going to be number 1.
And they all kind of do different things, they have different styles.
You screwed this up. You didn't do it right, Landon.
I was
of course. This isn't rank anything. This is gang up on Landon for about 10 minutes.
Honestly, it's the best part.
And anyway. Well, Matt,
yes.
Before we go, if I know you're not really tying much anymore, but if anybody wanted to get some flies from you, is there any way possible to do that?
No.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make that crystal clear.
You can buy the Umpqua ones, or occasionally I'll donate some flies for a good cause. But no, I'm not really taking orders. My weekends are precious now, and I don't want to spend them tying flies. But every now and then I get a little inkling to do something. So maybe follow me on Instagram, and if you're looking for flies, maybe I'll drop some.
Okay. All right, everybody, follow Matt on Instagram.
At FlyGeekMatt.
At FlyGeekMatt. We'll put it in the description, too.
Okay.
Man, we really appreciate you coming on. This is great.
Yeah, it was.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we will catch all of y'all next week. And, everybody have a good evening, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace.
Look in the description below to find links to our website, online store, YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Discord server, and blog. Please send your podcast questions and inquiries to info@honeyholeangling.com. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you again next week.